The vast emptiness of space stretched before the human colony ship, a silent witness to humanity's last remnant. Captain HFY Park stood at the observation deck, his weathered hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the distant star clusters. 50,000 years had passed since the Galactic Council's ruthless destruction of Earth, a moment etched into every survivor's genetic memory. The ship, named Resilience, carried more than just humans. It carried hope, revenge, and a meticulously crafted plan generations in the making. 12,437 humans remained, each one a product of careful genetic engineering and strategic breeding. They were not the same humans who had once populated Earth. They were something more, something evolved. In the central data chamber, holographic displays flickered with historical records. Images of Earth's final moments played silently. Massive alien warships descending, cities crumbling, billions of lives extinguished in moments. The Council had believed they had eliminated humanity completely, a miscalculation that would become their ultimate downfall. HFY walked through the ship's corridors, passing advanced training chambers where young humans practiced combat, strategy, and technological manipulation. Every child knew their purpose from birth. They were not survivors. They were architects of revenge. The ship's genetic archives contained something extraordinary. During their centuries of hiding, humans had not just survived, they had transformed. Genetic modifications allowed enhanced cognitive abilities, rapid learning, and physical adaptations that made traditional human limitations seem primitive. Each generation was stronger, smarter, more prepared than the last. In the Quantum Communication Center, specialized technicians monitored hidden networks spanning multiple star systems. They collected information, tracked Galactic Council movements, and prepared the groundwork for their ultimate strategy. Tiny quantum entanglement devices, smaller than a human fingernail, were strategically placed across hundreds of alien worlds, creating an intelligence web the Council couldn't detect. HFY paused at a memorial wall displaying Earth's final coordinates. Photographs of lost cities, landscapes, and billions of murdered humans created a haunting mosaic of remembrance. Each image was a reminder, a motivation, a promise of future retribution. The ship's artificial intelligence, nicknamed Memory, continuously processed historical data and potential revenge scenarios. Trillions of potential strategic outcomes were calculated every microsecond. The AI wasn't just a computer, it was the collective wisdom of humanity compressed into an intelligent system. Young cadets trained in specialized chambers, learning languages of alien species, understanding complex political structures, and mastering technologies that would seem like magic to their ancestors. They weren't just preparing for war, they were preparing for a calculated surgical dismantling of the Galactic Council. Genetic engineering had produced humans with extraordinary capabilities. Some could process complex mathematical equations. In seconds, others could interface directly with technological systems, and a few demonstrated telepathic communication abilities. They were living weapons, each one a potential game-changer in the coming conflict. As the Resilience drifted silently through space, it carried more than just humans. It carried the accumulated knowledge, pain, and determination of a species that refused to be erased. The Galactic Council had made a fundamental mistake. They had not just attacked a planet, but an idea. And ideas, as humanity would soon demonstrate, were impossible to kill. HFY looked at his reflection in the observation window. His eyes, like those of every human on the ship, held a promise of return, a promise of judgment, a promise of revenge. Commander Hyun-Ki Kim studied the holographic star map, his fingers tracing invisible lines of potential strategic routes. The quantum communication network was almost complete, a web of microscopic devices that would become humanity's most powerful weapon. No alien civilization would detect these silent messengers, smaller than dust particles but capable of transmitting complex information across galaxies. In the deep research chambers of the Resilience, scientists worked tirelessly. They weren't just preparing technology, they were crafting a revolution. Advanced stealth systems now allowed human ships to move like ghosts through space, completely undetectable by any known scanning technology. Years of careful research had produced materials that could bend light, absorb radiation, and trick even the most advanced sensor systems. Recruitment of marginalized alien species became a critical strategy. Commander Kim understood that revenge required more than just human strength. In hidden communication centers, diplomatic specialists reached out to races that had been oppressed by the Galactic Council. Broken civilizations, conquered worlds, forgotten species. They would become humanity's silent army. The technology development was remarkable. Adaptive warfare systems could now predict and counter enemy movements with unprecedented accuracy. Artificial intelligence had evolved beyond simple computation. It could now understand complex emotional and strategic patterns. Each system was designed to learn, adapt, and overcome. In a secure training facility, a group of young recruits practiced advanced infiltration techniques. They could alter their physical appearances, mimic alien communication patterns, and integrate into different societies without detection. Some could change their genetic markers within seconds, becoming completely unrecognizable. Intelligence gathering became an art form. Tiny nanobots, smaller than blood cells, were programmed to collect information from various alien worlds. They could penetrate secure systems, extract data, and disappear without leaving a trace. The Galactic Council's most secure databases were slowly being mapped, analyzed, and understood. Hyun-Ki watched a simulation of their potential first strike. Thousands of potential scenarios played out, each calculated with mathematical precision. The humans weren't just planning a war. They were planning a complete systemic collapse of the Galactic Council's infrastructure. The recruitment of alien species wasn't just about adding military strength. It was about understanding the complex political landscapes of different civilizations. Some races provided critical intelligence, others offered technological insights, and a few promised strategic support when the moment was right. Specialized teams developed communication technologies that could bypass any known encryption. They could now understand and translate languages that had never been decoded before. Communication was becoming a weapon. Information, the ultimate tool of destruction. Genetic enhancement programs reached new levels of sophistication. Humans could now adapt to different atmospheric conditions within hours, survive extreme radiation, and heal from injuries that would kill most species instantly. They were becoming something more than human. They were becoming the ultimate, adaptive species. The quantum communication network was more than just a communication system. It was a living, breathing intelligence network that could predict, analyze, and respond to complex galactic events. Each node was connected, each piece of information instantly shared across the human fleet. Training simulations became increasingly complex. Young recruits were tested not just on physical abilities, but on psychological resilience, strategic thinking, and adaptive problem solving. They were being prepared for a mission that would define the future of their species. Commander Kim understood that their preparation was about more than revenge. It was about proving that humanity was not just a species to be erased, but a force to be respected. Every technological breakthrough, every strategic plan was a statement. Humans would never be victims again. As the Resilience continued its silent journey through space, the preparation continued. Thousands of specialists worked in synchronized harmony, each understanding their role in the grand design. The Galactic Council had forgotten about humanity. They would soon be reminded. Admiral Yoon Seo Lee watched the holographic displays, her fingers moving with precise calculation. The infiltration was more than a mission. It was a carefully orchestrated dance of deception that would dismantle the Galactic Council from within. The first wave of human agents had already integrated into critical council positions. They looked, sounded, and behaved exactly like the alien species they were mimicking. Years of genetic and psychological training had prepared them for this moment. Each agent carried multiple false identities, backup genetic modifications, and neural implants that could erase memories if captured. In the communications center, specialized teams monitored thousands of communication channels simultaneously. They weren't just listening, they were manipulating. Small strategic information leaks would create tensions between different alien species within the Council. A subtle message here, a carefully crafted data transmission there. The seeds of internal conflict were being planted. One agent, disguised as a mid-level bureaucrat in the Council's central administrative complex, had spent 5 years climbing the political ladder. She had access to communication networks, military deployment plans, and strategic resource allocations. Every piece of information was meticulously recorded and transmitted back to the human fleet. The psychological warfare was subtle but devastating. Human agents introduced small inconsistencies in official reports, created minor but critical communication breakdowns, and strategically positioned themselves to create doubt and mistrust. They understood that wars were often won in meeting rooms long before the first shot was fired. Specialized teams had developed technologies that could infiltrate the most secure alien communication systems. Quantum encryption breakers could now decode messages that were previously thought to be unbreakable. The Council's most secret conversations were now being listened to, analyzed, and used against them. In a hidden research facility, scientists worked on advanced holographic disguise technologies. These were not simple visual tricks but complete biological and neural mimicry systems. An agent could now become an exact replica of any alien species, down to the smallest genetic marker and neural response. The recruitment of marginalized alien species continued. Some were offered revenge, others promised independence, and a few were simply paid with advanced technologies. Each new ally added another layer to the complex infiltration strategy. Yun Seo understood that their infiltration was about more than gathering information. It was about creating a complete systemic breakdown of the Galactic Council's infrastructure. Every agent was a weapon, every piece of information a potential trigger for destruction. Communication networks were slowly being corrupted. Critical military deployment codes were subtly altered. Resource allocation systems were manipulated. The Council was bleeding internally, and they didn't even know it. One of the most critical infiltration points was the Council's Central Intelligence Network. Human agents had positioned themselves at every critical communication junction. They could now redirect, block, or modify information flows at will. The Council's own communication systems were becoming their greatest vulnerability. Training for these infiltration agents was brutal and comprehensive. They learned not just to mimic alien species, but to think like them. Psychological profiles were studied, cultural nuances understood, and behavioral patterns perfectly replicated. An agent could spend years in deep cover, waiting for the perfect moment to act. The quantum communication network allowed instant coordination between agents. A single command could activate hundreds of sleeper agents simultaneously. They were like a virus, slowly spreading through the Council's most critical systems. UNSCO reviewed the latest infiltration progress. Thousands of agents were now positioned in critical locations across multiple star systems. Military bases, communication centers, resource allocation departments. Humans were everywhere, unseen and undetected. The Galactic Council believed they had destroyed humanity 50,000 years ago. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The infiltration was almost complete. The real war was about to begin. Lieutenant Sungmin Choi watched the first wave of attacks unfold across multiple star systems. Years of preparation had led to this moment, a perfectly synchronized assault that would destroy the Galactic Council's infrastructure in mere hours. The attack began silently. Quantum communication networks suddenly went dark across hundreds of Council-controlled planets. Communication systems failed, military networks collapsed, and defense grids went offline. Before any alarm could be raised, the first wave of human strikes began. Precision-targeted electromagnetic pulses disabled entire planetary defense systems. Specialized ships, invisible to traditional scanning technologies, moved like ghosts between military installations. Each strike was calculated with mathematical precision. Not a single resource was wasted, Not a single attack was random. On the Council's central administrative planet, multiple government buildings suddenly lost all power. Communication systems crashed, backup generators failed, and critical data networks disappeared. Panic began to spread faster than information could be verified. The human fleet used technologies beyond the Council's understanding. Ships could teleport between star systems, change their molecular structure to bypass shields, and attack with weapons that seemed to defy the laws of physics. Each ship was a living weapon, capable of adapting to any defensive strategy in milliseconds. Sleeper agents activated simultaneously across hundreds of worlds. Military commanders found themselves unable to communicate. Defense systems mysteriously malfunctioned, and critical infrastructure began to collapse from within. The Council's most secure systems were being dismantled by the very people they thought they had destroyed. Genetic-enhanced human soldiers moved with superhuman precision. They could survive in environments that would kill most species, communicate telepathically, and adapt to combat situations faster than any known technology could respond. Traditional warfare meant nothing against their advanced capabilities. Strategic. Targets fell one by one. Resource allocation centers, military command posts, communication hubs. Each was hit with surgical precision. The attacks were not about destruction, but about complete systemic collapse. The Galactic Council was being taken apart piece by piece. Psychological warfare reached its peak. Holographic technologies created mass confusion, making it impossible for Council forces to understand the true nature of the attack. Some planets saw multiple versions of the same event, creating total communication breakdown. Lieutenant Choi monitored the assault from the command center of the Resilience. Each attack was a carefully orchestrated move in a complex chess game that had been planned for generations. Humanity was not just fighting, they were executing a perfectly planned revenge. Alien species that had been oppressed by the Council began to rise. The human infiltration had prepared the ground, creating opportunities for rebellion in multiple star systems. What had seemed like a human assault was quickly becoming a multi-species uprising. Advanced AI systems predicted and countered every possible Council response. Military strategies were calculated and recalculated in microseconds. The humans were always 10 steps ahead, their technological superiority turning the entire assault into a one-sided conflict. Critical research facilities were targeted. Years of scientific achievements were erased, advanced technological developments destroyed. The Council was being systematically dismantled, their most valuable resources turned to dust. Communication intercepted from Council leadership revealed total confusion. They could not comprehend how a species they had destroyed 50,000 years ago could now be executing such a perfect assault. Panic began to replace military discipline. The attack was not just about military victory, it was about sending a message. Humanity would never again be a forgotten species. They would never again be victims. As the first day of assault came to an end, the Galactic Council had lost over 60% of its critical infrastructure. Entire planetary systems were now in chaos, communication was impossible, and their military response was in complete disarray. Lieutenant Sungmin Choi allowed himself a small smile. The first phase of revenge was complete. The real judgment was about to begin. President Yoon Ji-kwon stood on the bridge of the flagship, her eyes fixed on the holographic display of the Galactic Council's central planet. 50,000 years of pain, survival, and preparation had led to this moment, the final confrontation. The Council's leadership had been gathered in their most secure location, believing they were protected. They were wrong. Human technology had already penetrated their most advanced defense systems. Every room, every communication channel, every breath was now under human control. As the communication channels opened, the Council leaders saw something they never expected. Not an angry mob, not a vengeful army, but a calm, calculated human delegation. President Kwan's voice was steady, her words measured and precise. 50,000 years ago, you believed you destroyed humanity, she began. You were mistaken. The holographic displays showed the complete collapse of the Council's infrastructure. Military bases were gone, communication networks destroyed, resource systems dismantled. What had taken generations to build was now dust in mere days. Genetic records were displayed showing the systematic destruction of Earth. Names of billions of murdered humans scrolled across the screens. Each name was a testament, each life a reason for the revenge that was about to be delivered. The human delegation presented their ultimatum: complete surrender or total extinction. No negotiations, no compromises. The Council would dismantle itself, transfer all resources to human control, and accept total human governance of the galactic systems. Technological demonstrations showed the Council the full extent of human capabilities: ships that could teleport, soldiers who could survive in any environment, communication systems that could predict and counter any possible resistance. Humanity was no longer just a species, they were a force of nature. Detailed records were presented, showing how the Council had systematically destroyed human colonies, murdered civilian populations, and attempted to erase human existence. Every crime was documented, every action traced back to specific Council members. The psychological warfare was devastating. The Council leaders saw not just a military defeat, but a complete moral judgment. Humanity had not just survived, they had evolved, prepared, and now returned as something far beyond what the Council could comprehend. Genetic modifications allowed human representatives to survive in the Council's toxic environment without protection. They stood calmly, demonstrating technological capabilities that seemed like magic to the defeated leadership. President Quan presented the final terms: complete human governance of all galactic systems, total transfer of technological resources, and public acknowledgement of the Council's crimes against humanity. The choice was simple: comply or be erased. Quantum communication systems allowed instant translation, ensuring every word was understood perfectly. The human delegation spoke not with anger, but with cold, calculated precision. This was not an emotional revenge. This was a systematic removal of a threat. The Council's military capabilities had been systematically destroyed. Their communication networks were controlled, their defense systems were offline, and their leadership was completely isolated. Resistance was impossible. As the negotiations continued, holographic displays showed the complete human fleet. Thousands of ships, each with technologies beyond current understanding, waited silently. The message was clear. This was not a negotiation. This was a judgment. Genetic records showed how humanity had not just survived, but evolved. Enhanced cognitive abilities, adaptive technologies, psychological manipulation skills. Humans were now a species that had transcended traditional biological limitations. The final moments of the negotiation were silent. The Council leadership understood they had no choice. Humanity would not just replace them. They would redefine galactic governance entirely. President Yoonji Kwan made one final statement. 50,000 years ago, you tried to erase us. Today, we return to restore balance. The Galactic Council had been judged. Humanity's revenge was complete.